Chapter 5. Of course she wasn't drunk, said Dad when I told him the story the next day. For heaven's sake, Danny, have you ever seen your mum drunk in your whole life? Do you even know what drunk is? It's what Pete's friends always are when they stay over, I said. Said Dad, grunting as he took his glasses off to read the instructions on a packet of spaghetti. Well, that's true enough. But you should know your mam better than that. It was an accident. That's all. The police know it. The parents of the little boy know it, and even your mam knows it. Then why is she so upset? I asked. Because although it wasn't her fault, she still feels responsible. You can understand that, can't you? Look, she was driving home from the shops, coming down Parker Grove. A witness saw the whole thing. She said that your mam wasn't even driving fast, but this little boy, Andy, came charging out from a house. He ran out onto the road without looking left or right. There was no way she could have stopped in time. We're not sure what the little boy was even doing there. It wasn't even his house. He lives a few doors down on the other side of the street. Maybe he was lost, I suggested. Well, we'll find out in due course, I'm sure. Is he going to die? I asked, and Dad shook his head. Why don't you go outside, he said. Dinner's not for another hour yet. I sighed and went into the garden. My bike was standing where I'd left it, propped up against the fence between our house and Luke Kennedy's. I jumped on the saddle, and that's when I saw her for the first time. She'd been watching me from across the road, standing beside a tree. She had pale red hair, down to her shoulders, and was wearing blue jeans with a large white pattern of a daisy printed across one of the knees. She was about the same age as me, but I didn't know her, so she couldn't have been in my school. I didn't slow down, but I stared at her, wondering why she was watching me as I cycled down the road, turned the corner, and vanished out of sight. I got a puncture when I was out and didn't have anything to fix it with, so I ended up having to wheel my bike all the way home again. I always took the shortcut through the estate when I was coming home, but that day I took a different route. I went down Parker Grove, the road that Mam had been driving on when the little boy had run out in front of her. It was a street like ours, with a lot of trees outside the houses. I didn't know which was Andy's house, but as I was making my way along, wheeling my bike beside me, a car pulled into a driveway and a woman came running across the road. Michael, Samantha, she called towards the couple who were getting out of the car. How's Andy doing? Is there any news? He's no worse, said the woman, Samantha quietly. The doctors say that's a good sign. They always say the first 48 hours are critical, don't they? Well, no worse is better than nothing, said the woman. He's bound to wake up soon. If only he would respond to something we do, said Samantha then, shaking her head in frustration. We talk to him all the time. We play the songs he likes on the stereo. This morning we set up a video of some cartoon that he watches and played it over and over, but there's nothing. It's as if... Her voice trailed off and she started to cry. I turned the wheel of my bike a few more times and saw a piece of glass wedged in the tyre. I hadn't really been looking for the puncture, but I'd found it anyway. I put my fingers carefully on either side of it and pulled the shard of glass out, and the tyre began to hiss, which made me think I should have left it until I got home. And how's Sarah coping with it? Asked the woman, and I heard Andy's mum sniffling like she had a bad cold. It was the kind of sound that whenever I made it, Mum told me to get a handkerchief and not to be so disgusting. I don't know, she said. She's gone very quiet. She won't speak to either of us about it. I've never known her to be so detached from something before. She stopped talking then, and I looked up and saw the two women standing at the bottom of the driveway staring at me. Are you all right? Asked Andy's mum. Fine, I said. What are you doing down there? I coughed and tried to make myself look as innocent as possible. It's my bike, I said, standing up. It had a puncture. I was trying to see if I could find it. They went on staring at me, and I put my hands on the handlebars and started to wheel it forward. I'll have to bring it home to fix it. Neither of them spoke, but they watched me as I walked off. It took me about 2 minutes to get to the end of the road, and I could feel their eyes on my back all the way. Normally I would have cycled off as quickly as possible, but that wasn't possible with the puncture. Eventually I turned the corner, but it still took me about 20 minutes to get back to our street. She was sitting there, the girl with the red hair. She was sitting at the top of the road with her back to a tree, and I knew she was waiting for me. I couldn't think why. I didn't remember ever seeing her before today. Somehow I just knew she wanted to talk to me. I slowed down as I got closer, and she looked round and watched me, and then stood up, dusting down the back of her jeans with her hands as she did so. I turned my head away, wondering whether she would still be watching when I turned back, and she was. Normally I didn't like to talk to girls because they always looked at me like I'd just crawled out from under a rock. But I knew I had to stop and talk to this particular girl. I knew there was no way out of it. "Hi," I said, when I was only a few feet away from her, stopping now and holding the bike between us. "Are you Danny?" she asked. "Yes." "I knew it was you," she said then. "I saw you earlier." "You were waiting outside the house," I said. "You were watching me." She opened her mouth looking like she was going to disagree with me, but then she shrugged her shoulders as if she couldn't be bothered. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I was." And then it hit me, and I knew exactly who she was. "You're Sarah, aren't you?" I asked her. "Andy's sister." She nodded, and I couldn't help but think that I'd spent some of that afternoon spying on her family, while she'd spent nearly all the day spying on mine. And only now, when the day was nearly over, were we finally getting to talk to each other. It was like we were secret agents, and we got bored of it all and just decided to come clean.